The first thing I noticed about Queen Sereth of the Varelian Concord was that she didn't look like someone who needed saving. She stood at the center of the grand processional hall, tall and luminous beneath the bioluminescent arches, her carapace-lined mantle flowing like living silk. 6 attendants hovered behind her in perfect symmetry, their chitin polished, their posture reverent. The air hummed with low-frequency resonance, the sound Varelians produced subconsciously when anxious, which told me everything. I was human, not an envoy, not military, not even officially invited. I was just the systems engineer who had crawled through 3 kilometers of maintenance shafts because the station's defense grid had gone dark and nobody else knew how human-built redundancies actually worked. I still had my jacket on. Old, battered, patched twice at the elbow. Earth synth leather, insulation frayed at the cuffs. The kind of jacket you keep because it survived things with you. The kind you don't expect a queen to ever touch. "Identify yourself," Sereth said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried. Perfect translation piped into my neural implant, smooth and precise. "Marcus Hale," I said, raising my hand slowly. "Independent contractor. Station infrastructure." A ripple passed through the court. The Varelians shifted, mandibles clicking softly. "You are injured," the queen observed. I glanced down. Blood was seeping through my sleeve, dark and warm, soaking into the jacket lining. "Yeah," I said. "That happens sometimes." She tilted her head, an alien gesture that somehow still read as curiosity. "Explain." So I did. 2 hours earlier, the emergency alarms had screamed through the lower habitation ring. Not evacuation alarms. Those were melodic, designed to keep non-humans calm. These were raw, mechanical klaxons. Human grade, meaning someone had overridden the system. Sabotage. I'd been in the maintenance bay, elbow deep in a grav stabilizer, when the lights flickered and the station AI dumped a priority warning directly into my implant. Defense grid offline. Primary shield failing. Unauthorized vessel approaching. That last part mattered. The Varelian Concord was neutral ground, a diplomatic nexus. Turning off its defenses wasn't just an attack. It was a declaration. Security teams mobilized, but they were trained for ceremony and crowd control, not infrastructure failure. The attackers knew that. I didn't wait for orders. I grabbed my jacket, sealed my toolkit, and ran. The access route to the shield core wasn't on any official map anymore. Humans had added it decades ago after a micrometeor incident, and the Varelians had never bothered updating their schematics. Too inelegant. Too human. Which made it perfect. I crawled through conduits barely wide enough for my shoulders, metal scraping against my back, alarms echoing through the structure. When I reached the auxiliary junction, I saw the problem immediately. The shield core hadn't just been disabled. It had been rigged. Explosive charges, compact, directional. Enough to punch through the containment field and turn the entire central spire into a vacuumed graveyard. A delayed kill. Elegant. Pull. I started disarming. That's when the mercenaries found me. They weren't Varelian. Their armor was matte black, modular, built for adaptability. Privateers. The kind who didn't care who paid them, only how much. One of them shouted. I turned. The shot came too fast. It burned through my sleeve, tore into muscle, and sent me slamming into the bulkhead. Pain exploded up my arm, hot and blinding. I tasted copper. I remember thinking very calmly, this is going to be a problem. They advanced, weapons raised. I did the only thing I could. I finished disarming the bomb with one hand. Then I pulled the emergency vent lever. The pressure drop was instant. The mercenaries hadn't anchored themselves. They were yanked screaming into the void as the blast doors slammed shut milliseconds later. I collapsed. The shield core rebooted above me, light flooding the chamber as the containment field reformed. The station lived. I bled all over the floor. By the time security reached me, I was half-conscious and very annoyed that no one had a decent medkit. They patched me enough to keep me upright and escorted me, against my protests, straight to the Grand Hall, which is how I ended up bleeding on a diplomatic floor worth more than my entire home colony. I acted to preserve station integrity. I finished. And prevent your assassination. Silence followed. Then Sareth descended the dais. No attendants. No guards. She walked directly toward me. Every instinct screamed that this was a terrible idea, but nobody moved. Not even me. She stopped an arm's length away. You are not Varelian, she said softly. Last I checked. You are not bound by Concord loyalty codes. Nope. And yet you placed your body between my people and death. I shrugged, which hurt a lot more than I expected. It was the right thing to do. Her gaze dropped to my sleeve. Blood had soaked through completely now. You are still bleeding. Yeah, that too. Without warning, she reached out. Her fingers brushed my arm. Cool, almost electric, and then she did something that would be talked about for decades. She removed my jacket. The court erupted in stunned murmurs. Sareth held the jacket carefully, as if it were fragile. She turned it, examining the torn sleeve, the bloodstains, the worn patches. This garment absorbed the damage meant for you, she said. I mean partially, I muttered. I did the rest. She ignored me. In Varelian culture, she continued, addressing the court, we mark acts of life debt with sigils and song. Her eyes returned to mine. But humans have no such custom. No, I said. We mostly just pretend we're fine. Something in her expression softened. Then I will mark this in my way. She folded the jacket over her arms. This garment is now a royal holding. I blinked. Wait, what? It will remain with me, she said, as a reminder. A reminder of what? That even the smallest species may choose sacrifice over safety. The court went silent. I opened my mouth to argue, then stopped. Because suddenly, the jacket didn't feel like it belonged to me anymore. I spent the next 3 days in a med bay arguing with doctors who didn't understand why humans insisted on walking around before their wounds fully sealed. News spread fast. The footage of Sareth holding my jacket looped across the Concord. Analysts debated motives. Cultural experts argued implications. Humans, predictably, made memes. On the 4th day, a royal summons arrived. I expected a formal chamber. Instead, I was brought to a garden. Bioluminescent flora curved overhead, casting soft light. Sareth stood alone near a reflective pool. My jacket was draped over her shoulders. It looked different, cleaner, carefully mended. The tear had been stitched with thread that shimmered faintly, catching the light like starlight. You fixed it, I said. Yes. She turned. It was damaged in my defense, she said. I would not allow it to remain broken. I swallowed. That jacket's been with me a long time. So I have learned, she replied. Your records were thorough. Of course they were. I will return it, she said. But not today. I frowned. Why? Because the Concord faces a choice, Sareth said. And you, Marcus Hale, have already made yours. She stepped closer. There are those who believe humans are reckless, she continued, that you endanger others by acting without permission. Fair, I said. And yet, she said softly, you acted without hesitation to save a queen not your own. She removed the jacket and held it out. In our culture, she said, to keep such an object is to carry the burden of the act it represents. I took it carefully. You bled for us, Sareth said. Now we will remember. I pulled the jacket on. It fit the same, felt the same, but it wasn't the same anymore. What happens now? I asked. She smiled, a subtle shift in posture that translated perfectly. Now, she said, the Concorde knows what humans are willing to lose. I looked down at the stitched sleeve. And what are you willing to keep? She glanced at the jacket once more. The story, she said. And the debt. I nodded. Then I turned and walked back into a galaxy that suddenly felt a little smaller. And a lot more human. I didn't realize how much trouble my jacket had caused until the first vote failed. The Varelian Concorde wasn't supposed to fail votes. Consensus was their entire identity. Disagreement was managed quietly, smoothed away with ritual and time. But this time, the chamber fractured. On one side were the preservationists, ancient bloodlines who believed neutrality was sacred, that any deviation invited chaos. Humans, to them, were entropy given flesh. Useful, yes. Inspiring in small doses. Dangerous when elevated. On the other side stood the reform bloc, younger queens, envoys, and scholars who had watched the footage on repeat. A human bleeding on their floor. A queen holding his torn jacket. A decision made without protocol. And the galaxy had noticed. Trade delegations began requesting human advisors specifically. Security councils quietly asked for redundancy reviews based on human improvisational doctrine. Even species that had once dismissed humanity as loud, fragile mammals started recalculating. All because one queen had kept a jacket. Sareth summoned me again a week later. This time it wasn't a garden or a hall. It was the chamber beneath the spire, the place where Concorde law was rewritten only once every few centuries. I stood alone at the center ring. No jacket this time. Just a clean shirt, my arms still stiff beneath fresh sin-skin grafts. Sareth descended slowly, mantle shimmering with sigils I didn't recognize. You should not be here, she said quietly. Yeah, I replied. I got that impression. This chamber decides the direction of civilizations, she continued. And yet they insisted. They? I asked. She glanced upward. The lights shifted. Holographic projections bloomed into existence. Dozens of envoys, queens, and representatives from across the Concorde. Watching. Waiting. You became a symbol, Sareth said. Without asking. Without meaning to. I exhaled slowly. I really hate when that happens. A ripple of unfamiliar sound passed through the chamber. Laughter. Varelian laughter. Sareth faced the assembly. Marcus Hale acted as humans do, she said. He saw failure. He moved. He accepted loss as the price of action. She paused. And he lived. A projection flared, data streams, casualty projections, alternate timelines. One where I hadn't crawled through the conduit. One where the bomb detonated. One where the Concorde burned. The chamber went silent. The vote failed, Sareth said, turning back to me. They could not agree whether humans should be feared or welcomed. So, what did you decide? I asked. She reached behind her and placed my jacket on the stone beside me. It had changed again. New stitching traced the seams, subtle, elegant. Not decorative. Symbolic. A Varelian life mark, reserved for objects tied to irreversible acts. You will leave this station, Sareth said, and you will return to your people. Okay. And when the galaxy asks what humans value, she continued, you will not speak. I won't. You will show them, she said, gesturing to the jacket, because this object now carries Concorde recognition. My breath caught. That means... It means, she said gently, that any who harm you while you wear it will answer to us. The implications hit hard. Protectorate. Status. A bridge made of cloth and blood. Why me? I asked quietly. Saratha's voice softened. Because you did not ask for meaning, she said. You earned it. She stepped closer. In Varelian tradition, she said, a queen who keeps the mark of sacrifice shares its weight. Her fingers brushed the jacket sleeve, my sleeve. I will carry this choice with me, she said, as you carry its scar. I slipped the jacket on. It settled around my shoulders like it always had. Comforting. Heavy.
Right.
What happens to the Concorde? I asked. Sareth turned back toward the watching galaxy. It changes, she said.
Slowly.
Unevenly. Painfully. She looked at me one last time. Like all living things. The projections faded. The chamber emptied. When I left the station hours later, dock workers stopped and stared. Not in awe. In recognition. Not because I was important. Because I was human. Months later, I'd hear rumors. That Queen Sareth still kept a thread from my jacket sealed in her private archive. That new Concord doctrine included a clause informally called the Hale exception, permission to act without consensus when extinction was the alternative. That young queen studied human crisis footage now, learning chaos the way we'd learned order. As for me, I went back to fixing things. Stations. Ships. Systems nobody else wanted to touch. And every time something went wrong, every time alarms screamed and plans failed, someone would glance at the jacket on my shoulders and say, let the human handle it. Because once I bled saving an alien queen. And she kept my jacket long enough for the galaxy to understand why that mattered.